I'll kick us off and just say hello to everyone who's joining. Thanks so much for coming to this third panel of the year on diversity, equity, and inclusion in gymnastics. For this last panel, we're focusing on LGBTQ issues with athletes and allies in the community. This topic is especially close to my heart because in addition to being the Chief Communications and Marketing Officer for USA Gymnastics, I am also gay. I am married to a wonderful woman who was an elite athlete and an Olympian herself, and together we have a rowdy little 2-year-old. Seeing other gay role models for us was always something that was incredibly helpful, so I'm especially honored to be a part of hosting this panel for the gymnastics community. Like our last 2 panels, I'm going to ask each of these folks to just spend a minute introducing themselves, and we'll then hand it over to Jessica, our moderator, to introduce herself and get the party started. So with that, Erin, would you mind starting us off?
Yes, not a problem. So my name is Erin Yauk, and I was on the USA World team for tumbling and trampoline for about 9 years, I think. I won worlds 2 times, 2 individual titles, 1 team title, and a world age groups. And I retired in 2015. So it seems like forever ago. In the midst of all of that, I did come out before my last season. So there were some struggles in that we can talk about in a little bit. But I'm in Fort Myers right now doing medical sales, and I live here with my girlfriend, Allie, and my cute dog, Milo. I think that sums me up.
Awesome. Thanks, Erin.
Yep.
Kale?
Yeah. My name's Kale Robinson. I was on the U.S. Junior National team, and then I went to Stanford, and I was there from 2010 to 2014. During my time at Stanford, I came out my freshman year, so that was 2010. Actually, funnily enough, Josh was the first person I ever came out to, so it's kind of coming full circle. During my time at college, I started coaching, and then I've been coaching full-time since I graduated in 2014. And I moved up to Seattle about 1.5 years ago to be here with my partner. His name is Owen, and we have a 1-year-old son named Apollo. So that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks, Kale. Josh?
No problem.
Yeah, I'm Josh Dixon from San Jose, California. I did all of my gymnastics club program there, university program with Kale, actually at Stanford between 08 and 11, or 07 and 11, and then was on senior team in the resident program at the Olympic Training Center up until end of 2016. And then very quickly moved into working in the US Senate, and then now in private sector business stuff. So, and I'm based in Newport Beach. So that's me.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Savannah?
Hey, my name is Savannah Shane here. I am a current collegiate gymnast. I go to the University of Florida. I'm in my junior year currently. I actually came out recently this past year with my girlfriend Sid on social media. So this is all pretty new to me, and I'm excited to have been asked to be a panelist for this, and very excited to share my experiences. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here. So looking forward to it.
Thanks, Savannah. Mark?
Yeah, Mark Williams. I was a gymnast back in the 70s at the University of Nebraska. Got my undergraduate degree and taught high school and started coaching for about 8 years. I did that club coaching and doing the teaching, and then moved into being the assistant coach at the University of Oklahoma. I've been here as Oklahoma coach now 32 years, 22 of them as the head coach, and excited to be part of the panel today.
Thanks, Mark. Jessica?
So my name is Jessica O'Byrne. I was a amazing level 5 gymnast, you guys. And I also competed in adult gymnastics for many years. And then I started a podcast called Gymcastic about 8 years ago. And it has grown to be pretty popular, if I do say myself. And we had an LGBT panel many, many years ago, and Josh was actually on that panel. It was at the time we could not find any lesbians or women to come on the show at all and do the panel. So I'm so excited that all these years we've come full circle and USAG is hosting this, and that we have amazing women here to share their experiences as well. So I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's start. I want to direct this to Savannah, because this is you're the newest member of the group, and I want to know what it was like for you to come out in gymnastics. How did your coaches and teammates react? Were they surprised? Were you surprised by how they reacted?
Coming out was definitely super scary for me personally, just because growing up, I always kind of saw gymnastics as like a heteronormative sport. And even growing up in the part of the country I'm from Georgia. So it's just kind of frowned upon in the high school I went to and everything. It was just never seen as normal. So coming to college and really getting to be myself was something that I'm just super appreciative of. And I was super scared to come out at first to my teammates and my coaches, and just thinking about if they were going to see me differently, or if they were going to treat me differently or be uncomfortable around me or anything like that. But starting my freshman year, I actually came out to two of my best friends on the team, and they took it super well and were just always so supportive. And, nothing ever changed. It was just normal with them. And ever since then, I started a relationship my freshman year with a girl, and slowly my teammates started figuring out. And it was definitely scary, and I was always scared to tell the next person, but everyone would just continue to show their love and support for me, and no one ever treated me differently. And I think that was just the biggest thing for me, is that everyone treated me normally. It was never anything different. And then recently, this past year, I'm in a different relationship now, but also with a girl. And that's when my coaches found out. And that's when it was kind of publicized for all of social media and the whole gymnastics world to know. And I've been in love, and, it's just amazing, because if I would have known that I would have received this much love and support, it's nothing that I should have ever been scared about, I guess. So I'm just definitely very grateful for the love and support that all of my teammates and all of my coaches has showed me over the past few months. So I know that everyone has had different experiences with coming out, but mine's been pretty great. So I'm thankful for that.
Erin, can you talk about kind of your coming out experience in TNT, which I think a lot of us assume like it's much more accepting than artistic has been, or the stereotype of artistic has been. Did you always feel safe, supported? What was it like for you?
Oh boy, loaded question, but so kind of backing it up a little bit. So I've known that I was gay or felt some different way since I was like 6 years old, and hid it my entire life. So I dated men, and I ended up meeting somebody when I was 19, and I couldn't run away from that. I was like, shoot, this is happening. Here we are. So wasn't prepared, wasn't anything. And it just kind of happened. And I knew that I was so happy, and it's what I wanted. My mom owns a gymnastics gym, so that's where I trained my entire life. So a part of me was afraid of that. I coached at the gym, and these kids know me, and all of that. And I felt scared. I didn't want to talk to the parents that I usually talk to and like just joke around with, because I felt like I was just lying. Like having them not know, I felt like I was lying at my own gym. My family didn't take it necessarily too well, so that was not great. It's come full circle. It's also been like 7 years now. But as far as coming out in the tumbling and trampoline world, I would definitely not say it's heteronormative or known to be that way. I would say it's almost the opposite. I mean, mainly men. I have a ton of male friends that are gay and very openly. And so having them was awesome because they were like my first text that I sent. I always prefaced it very bad, like, I have something to tell you. I don't want you to think differently. And they all were like, you're pregnant. And I was like, no, I'm not. So I made it seem like it was a big deal. And then I was like, no, I'm just gay and I'm dating this girl. And they were like, oh my gosh, like, we love you. So that was totally fine. As far as, I think the first time I saw people was at the ranch. We had a camp at the time and I was nervous to see, that was right after people started to, they knew when I was there and everyone was around, and I was nervous how people were going to act and if it was going to be weird, and it was totally fine. Nothing at all was weird, and it was very much so accepted. Everyone was proud of me, and like that part was great. I had one experience while I was away at a World Championships in Denmark, which was probably the worst experience that I had. It was the night before our prelims, and a fake Instagram popped up, and the title said World Champion Lesbian. So I won the year before, and I don't know who was out to get me at that point, and I was out, but not, it wasn't all over social media, or I would definitely not put that title as myself. So that kind of startled me, and I had to call some people that like are higher ups and see what was going on. And it was scary. Like, they were messaging and some things were pretty scary. Still don't know where that came from. But that hurt to be kind of just, I don't know, attacked in that way moments before, or a day before a very large event.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kale, can you talk a little bit about your coming out experience and what it was like for you?
Yeah, totally. So I, similar to Savannah, I grew up in a more typically conservative area. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. So luckily for me, my club coach was like a dad, and he was very open and accepting. And I never came out to him before moving to college, but the gym always felt like my safe space. But outside of that bubble, it didn't feel as safe and it didn't feel as welcoming. So in my recruiting process, I definitely was seeking out a place where I felt that I would be accepted from the moment I walked on campus. So I didn't outwardly say this at the time, but that's a huge reason that I chose Stanford. I just automatically had a comfort level with the team, with the environment, with the whole university, and that eventually I could be myself there. And luckily, like I said, I came out to Josh first my freshman year. I think it was probably around winter break. And then from there, I told my whole team, and everybody was super accepting. And then later on in my college career, I feel like I was in school at a time where if you can play movement was a huge thing. And I was fortunate enough to be part of Stanford's video that they put out. And I wasn't a founding member, but I was super closely associated with the people that started the Stanford Athletes and Allies Together organization. And just, I don't know, I was kind of on the cutting edge, if you will, at Stanford of getting LGBT inclusion in athletics at the forefront of people's minds and really trying to make a difference. So I feel super fortunate that I went to school during that time, and that was kind of my experience. It wasn't an I feel fortunate there was a larger community that all wanted the same thing at the same time, and it felt really empowering to be part of something that was bigger than myself, bigger than the university, bigger than all of it. It's, human rights and equality. So that was super inspiring for me. Yeah.
And Josh, what was your experience like coming out, and how has it been since that time? I mean, I remember you were the first publicly making a statement out male gymnast on the national team and competing. And then right before then you competed at Olympic trials, and that was a big deal.
Yeah. So kind of my experience at Stanford, it was like, I'm from the Bay Area, a very diverse and inclusive community. And then obviously the university is a mirror of the Bay Area and Silicon Valley. And it was kind of me just getting over me with the help of friends, coaches, athletes, other teammates in the athletic community at Stanford, where I saw the example of, oh yeah, there are members of the LGBTQ community on varying teams, and it literally does not matter. It's actually something, a point of celebration. And so it was, okay, it's time to kind of be who I am. And for my closest friends and teammates, they're actually, it felt like there was a lot to lose in terms of a relationship. But ultimately it was a weight and a pressure that was holding me back in navigating where I wanted to go in the sport. And major credit to JD Reeve, who was actually not my coach at the time. He had already moved to Iowa, but more than a coach, was a mentor and someone who, like, it was funny because we had this conversation after the fact. He was like, oh yeah, I knew all along, but I needed you to like come into that yourself. And it's my responsibility as a coach to support you, obviously, in the craft, drag you through the tough love of gymnastics, but also develop you as a person outside of the sport. So the experience of coming out, it was all the ebbs and flows you can think of internally, but ultimately it was backed by a very accepting team, friend group, community, and gymnastics as a whole in the United States. So yeah, and it was cool to have that moment at trials and in hometown and everything. At that point, I was just so focused on the craft of it all, not the optics outside of it, that it was kind of interesting for me. But yeah, that was my trajectory.
Mark, one of the things that I've heard about your program is that not only do people feel supported and like they can be themselves, but also that part of your recruiting process is making sure you recruit the person. Can you talk about how you go about making people feel comfortable from the recruiting process to being on the team?
Yeah, well, I'm clearly the elder statesman here. So, you know, it's been a process of education, kind of learning my way around as a head coach even. And eventually, you know, with experience and age, you have wisdom. So hopefully at this point, I'm trying to bring in guys who have the same vision I have for my team. You know, we want to be great with the community. We want to be good as students, athletes, you know, and supporting each individual that's on the team for kind of a greater goal of putting together a team that wins national championships. So, you know, I don't know that it's always been a welcoming kind of environment when I first started 32 years ago. But I think as I became a head coach, I've learned enough over time that, you know, I want people to be who they want to be. I want to support what they want to do with their lives. And for them to come to the University of Oklahoma, it's about getting an education and deciding a career and having a path as adults going into the world and experiencing life and being happy. So I try to support that. And so if I've got, you know, I've had a couple guys who have come in, you know, saying, I just want a place where I feel like it's home. And, you know, I spoke with one of my guys, Eric Holly, yesterday about his experience when he came out, when he was on my team. And he said, you guys were all great. You know, I felt supported. I felt like that was my family. And it's not always that way in this state, in Oklahoma, being very conservative. So he had his challenges away from the gym, but I was at least happy to hear that we made, you know, his quest to be a student athlete in the NCAA one that he cherishes and feels prepared him now as, you know, he's working back in his hometown in Utah and, you know, happy with the decisions he's made in his life.
And one of the things, like, I think what was amazing earlier today, I was listening to Savannah's interview on the Half and Half Out podcast, and you were talking about just feeling so much love and happiness, being able to find someone that you fell in love with and being accepted, and how that changed you. And it made me so happy because I, was thinking about how this is really about, love and relationships and, happiness and joy, and that making you a better person and better athlete overall. But I know that it's not always perfect. Like Aaron just shared, and it can't all be sunshine and rainbows. So what are experiences that you think, part of this platform and USAG putting this on is what can people learn from? What are mistakes that people have made that they can become educated about and know not to do in the future? What are the things that you guys can point to maybe as an examples of, something that happened in your experience or in some way that gymnastics hindered where you wanted to go and who you wanted to be, that we can help change with this platform? Kale, do you have any stories that you want to share?
For me, I don't have any pointed negative stories, but I do think that, I think the message I wanted to bring today is that it's not enough to just accept someone once they've come to you and told you that they're gay. I think it's super imperative that we create environments in NCAA gymnastics, but more so in club gymnastics. Kids are facing all sorts of mental health issues today, with the prevalence of social media and all that stuff, that we go above and beyond to create an environment where they know that when they do come out, they will be accepted. Not they shouldn't have to go through this guessing game of, oh, how are they going to react when I come out? They should know when they're ready, when they're at peace with themselves, that when they do come out, they will be accepted, and that it's an inclusive space for lesbians, gays, trans. It doesn't matter. Just be yourself, and we should have an environment that provides people with the comfort that they can be their best selves when they're ready to be. So, like I said, if I had come out in the South, I might have a different example. I have examples from school. I don't have examples from the gymnastics community, other than just the typical, like, oh, do you have a crush on that girl? And me feeling like, sure, yeah, I do, but do I really know? And just like just feeling like I have to go along with that kind of banter of being a teenage boy. But I feel fortunate. My teammates, it was really just do gymnastics, and your personal life will celebrate outside the gym. But when we're in the gym, it's go time. It's prove yourself as a gymnast and how you fit into this team and this mold. And but I just think that getting rid of the heteronormative nature, asking what your preferred pronoun is, don't make assumptions. I think in club gymnastics, I'm in the process of opening my own club, and I really want to. I think the typical way that clubs are structured is you have like girls beginner, girls intermediate, girls advanced, and then boys beginner. And I just want to say this is a beginner gymnastics class, and in this class we're going to do balance beam and floor exercise and the uneven bars, or we're going to have a mixed class. But I don't want to put this guy girl label on it. If a little boy wants to do the balance beam, I want to support that, and he should be in a class full of other girls. It doesn't matter to me. It shouldn't matter. And I think just being an example of how I would want to be treated is, how I what my experience has brought me to, I guess. So,
Josh, didn't you have an experience where your sisters went to school and had to face a bully?
Oh, this adds race to the conversation. It was called like Chocolate Boy or something in high school, and my sister was a senior when I was a freshman, and I was like so naive to like, oh, like, okay, like that's kind of mean. And then her basketball team literally like beat them up. So, and then they got in trouble for it, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, in terms of the communication element of inclusivity in sport and LGBTQ inclusivity in gymnastics, I think the most like poignant issue is the communication of just that, of this is an inclusive environment for everyone, like people of color, whether you're Black, white, Asian, gay, bi, trans, and just having that nomenclature out there so that, like what Kale said, there is no question as to how anyone from a club program to a university program to a national team, how you will be received outside of the curation of your craft, which is gymnastics. And I will speak to what I saw Mark in his program. There were very many athletes who I saw of color or in the LGBTQ community when I was in high school and entering the collegiate process, where it's like, oh, wow. And however cliche it might sound, like that representation really mattered to me, of like seeing, oh my God, like there are Black guys in sport at a very high level functioning on a rock star team. And obviously the coaching staff and the team and environment are supportive of that. And frankly, they welcome that. And there are members of the LGBTQ community as well. So I just think that communicating that message of inclusivity is so easily and oftentimes overlooked, because now it's like, oh yeah, duh, but no, you still have to drill it down in the rhetoric of your program or entity.
Savannah, did you have anybody that you looked up to, either as a gymnast or another athlete, as either gay or queer, who you looked at, who was an example for you?
I actually don't have one that I ever really looked up to. I mean, I know recently with like the US women's national soccer team, they've spoken a lot about equality and everything. So I really admire that. But growing up, I really never had one single role model who's a part of the LGBTQ community. It was something that I kind of pushed off myself for a long time until I really got to college. But being in college and seeing more representation has been super inspiring for me. And knowing that I didn't really have anyone in gymnastics, I guess, that I looked up to, because growing up, it was just gymnastics for me. Other sports, I really didn't even pay much attention to. I was just like tunnel vision on gymnastics. So I just hope that I can be a role model for young girls who might be questioning their sexuality. And I just hope that I can kind of serve that purpose, and I can be that for someone, or be the person that I wish I had, growing up.
Have you had that happen?
That's really my goal here. And yeah,
have you had that?
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I think my connection's like lagging, but yeah, I actually have had that happen. I've had several gymnasts actually like DM me on Instagram and been like, thank you so much for your story, and like putting this out there. I've been questioning my sexuality, and just seeing that there's someone else out there like me is super inspiring. So just knowing that I can make an impact on at least one person's life, really helps me a lot, because that's something that I wish I had when I was younger. And I think it's just great to see, and it just makes me super happy just to help even one person. So to have multiple young gymnasts reaching out to me and saying that I'm a role model to them really brings a smile to my face.
And Erin, we always think of TNT, and like you said, as being like more positive in terms of like the environment. And can you speak to just like some of the ways that coaches maybe helped you feel that way? Did they use, when they asked like if someone was going to prom, did they just keep it neutral and not say like girl or guy? How did they do those kind of things to make it more inclusive?
Honestly, I don't remember it ever being like a super safe place to feel. Like I didn't feel unsafe necessarily, but it definitely was like, oh, do you have a boyfriend? And I'm like, oh no. And depending on where you're at or where I was at, it like made me feel like I had to be in this box of who I'm not. So when world trials came around, or nationals and things like that, like that was a worry. What if there is somebody who might be super conservative and has a very strong view against LGBT? Like that was a question of mine. However, it got to a point where being myself was more important than making a team. If you don't want me on this team because of who I love and who I am, then I don't think I want to be a part of it either. So that was a worry. But going back to the kind of earlier conversation and how people can change, like how coaches can change communication or just the organization in general, there is so often a like, oh, do you have a new boyfriend or who, you know, and it puts you in a position to either just, which now I'd be like, no, but my girlfriend. But at the time, it instantly makes you feel wrong, or it makes you feel like you were just assumed to be that. And so that would be something I would say, you know, if coaches were to talk to kids and, oh, do you have a crush on a little girl, or, you know, and coaches talk, whatever. But just to not say like to a little boy, like, do you have a girlfriend at school? You know, like just almost just avoid that, or just anything. And with older athletes, like, oh, are you in a relationship? And just like open conversation without saying whether it's a male or a female, because it doesn't really matter. But I think I just knew quite a few on our national team. I was pretty close with some gay men, and that just helped. And I saw that they were supported because they were successful and they have, you know, they're great people. And I did see that they weren't treated any differently. So in that sense, I felt a little bit safe, but being the only girl, I still felt like it would be questioned, or if it was a phase or this and that. And those are things that I just don't really feel is necessary to go into. But seeing how my gay friends were treated within TNT, I was like, all right, I think it'll be okay. But it's all different. It should be all the same, where, you know, regardless of where you fit in the LGBTQ community, should be treated all the same, but unfortunately it's not.
And Mark, can you speak to some of the things that you talked about, how you're not sure that it was very inclusive when you first started, and, you know, kind of what you've changed over the years, or how you've kind of tried to make things more inclusive. And I wanted to point out what Kale was talking about with having just kind of like genderless gymnastics. You had a guy on your team who did the most beautiful, amazing floor routine that people would call the style of it a Raymond White of a women's artistic routine, and he competed that, and it was amazing, and that was totally accepted, and he was fantastic on floor. Like, he's a legend.
Yeah, Raymond was a character. You know, he showed his inner beauty every time he went out and did a floor routine. At NCAA's, I was actually very disappointed in the judging, because I felt like he deserved to make it into the individual event finals. And I think he got probably deducted a little where he probably shouldn't have, because sometimes judging gymnastics is, you know, those judges are very conservative about that kind of thing. And he stuck many landings, you know, it was really great. It was great for our team. And that was my message to Raymond. Hey, be yourself out there, but we want the best score for the team. You know, I'm not going to give you a pass about getting it into the floor lineup unless you've earned it in practice. And so, you know, at times you're tough that way, but a lot of things I can't control when they're away from the gym. So I think, you know, what I referred to some extent was the ability to sort of educate my team over the years about being accepting of everyone, whatever they bring to the table, and respect who they are. I'm not sure I did a lot of that in my early years. It was more just about, hey, we're going to go in and work hard, and we're going to try to win meets. And now I spend more time talking in lineups, talking individually with my athletes. I want to make sure they're finding the reason why they want to do gymnastics, and why they're part of the team, and what motivates them, and how we can get them better and happier about what's going on, you know, on a daily basis of being in the sport, but also moving away from the sport eventually, and going out, having a successful life beyond gymnastics. So, you know, I think it was just, for me, it was the development of being more than just a gymnastics coaching technical skills, but actually beginning to coach individual guys, my team as a group, and recognizing there's a world outside of the gym that we all have to assimilate into, and learning how to do that where we respect one another and all get along.
And, one of the things that I think why I brought up Raymond was, I saw him do his floor routine with his double stag oversplit out of his first tumbling pass into the corner. And I was like, this team's cool. This coach is cool. This team is cool. They're down. I'm now an Oklahoma men's fan. I'm so excited about this because he was absolutely allowed to be himself and thrive in it. As you used him in the team finals, and so when I watched that, I was like, okay, this team is doing something different. It's not the heteronormative sport kind of a thing. What are things that you guys can think about, like Kale was speaking to, having kind of genderless classes or classes that, events that aren't just, this is only for girls and boys shouldn't do it. What can we do as a sport to kind of change that, that perspective, and that people thinking that it is that kind of a sport? Yes, Erin.
All right. So I have a question kind of for everyone. I think I'm the only TNT person here, right? So in our discipline, I think it's very as younger classes. Well, actually, even at my mom's gym, it is pretty mixed. You can have, if we had enough boys, it could be a boys class. But I like Kale's idea of it just being it is a class. This is your level. And with tumbling and trampoline, I think it's easy to do that because all of us do the same events. At some point you specialize in whatever. But with artistic, there's different events for males and females. So I feel like that's a harder kind of area of gymnastics to go ahead and make, other than the beginning classes and things like that. So I think it would be awesome if somehow that could be incorporated, but how would that work as far as with the different disciplines for men and women?
I guess I haven't gone there that far yet as far as competitive gymnastics. I mean, for me, it wouldn't matter, I guess. I don't know what the route within USA Gymnastics or a larger organization would be if I had a guy that wanted to compete on uneven bars and beam and floor. I think it's uncharted territory, and I think it's something worth exploring, and whether it becomes something that is happening where boys are competing in what's stereotypically known as women's gymnastics, or girls are competing in what's known as boys gymnastics. I don't think it's going to become the absolute norm. I think most girls are going to stick to doing bars, beam, floor, vault, and most boys will stick to doing the 6 men's events. But if a girl does want to do that, I guess I just don't see the issue with them entering into a competition and participating in the same age group as the boys, if that's what she wants to do, and vice versa. I guess it doesn't need to be, for me, it doesn't need to be this big mind-boggling, earth-shattering dilemma. I think you just enter them into a competition and they know what they're getting themselves into, and if they want to compete against the boys on those events, then let them go for it. I don't know. I think it gets more complicated when you talk about national teams and how the IOC would see it, and how all these larger organizations would account for just the differences in what genetically make up a male and a female, and if that puts different people at different advantages or disadvantages. But I think on a smaller scale, I just don't think it should be a big deal.
I agree.
I agree. I echo everything Kale says, and then as a point of humor, I was like, dang it, now Simone can just sweep the whole men.
Right?
The dream.
Yeah.
Carol, can you speak a little bit to the new policy that you guys just put out?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I was going to touch on that. I thought it fits in nicely here with what we were just discussing, because it's one of the things that came up, particularly around non-binary inclusion, right? So the policy on transgender inclusion is below that international track level, right? Athletes can participate in the discipline that aligns with their gender identity. And then non-binary athletes can choose what discipline they want to participate in. So really open and inclusive policy that revamped. I think the last policy was maybe from about 5 years ago. So lots more inclusivity for trans and non-binary athletes, but it does raise these questions of that's for people who identify as a particular gender or as non-binary, but what happens if you have somebody who identifies as the other gender but wants to compete in a discipline that is specifically for the gender they don't identify with? So I think those are questions that like we're all grappling with trans and non-binary inclusion, and it actually opens up this bigger question that we've all been talking about. So I think we took the first step there with trans and non-binary inclusion, but it's not the end of the conversation. So we're really excited about the new policy and how that'll make especially recreational gymnastics and lower level more inclusive, but know that it raises questions too. So I think that's where we're at.
And I wanted to mention that we have Julia in the comments here, and she's the president of the NEIGC, and they just put out I think this is the same Julia who competed, I can't remember what it's called, but she competed every single event in one meet, all 4 women's events and all 4 men's events in the same competition. There's a great name for that, which I can't remember. And they actually have it's a different Julia, but they actually have a unified artistic code that accounts for this, and they also they just put out a gender neutral race inclusive code of points. So unlike the FIG code of points is what we use in elite and an NCAA, what we use too is the JO code. Is that now called the developmental code. Theirs is the pictures are there's a woman doing P-bars. There's a black man doing beam. There is everything is included and different, and it's not just a white girl stick figure who is doing the event. So it's super impressive, and I would love to see USAG like advocate for that kind of change. I mean, not to just to put it out there, Carol, while we're on this public
putting me on the spot or anything.
Not putting on the spot or anything,
that.
but it's something that I think we kind of take for granted because we just grow up with it, and that's what we see. And then to see something kind of revolutionary like that, like, oh, why isn't it like that? So to speak to this a little bit, what are kind of the stereotypes maybe that you guys have faced in as a gymnast, as a TNT world champion? Like Savannah, has there been anything that's that has come up for you since you've come out?
Like stereotypical things.
Yeah, or has anyone else stereotyped you, like been like, oh, I thought all that makeup and bows, there can't be.
Yeah, I would say that's like one of the reasons that artistic gymnastics is seen as like such a heteronormative sport, because people look at us and think like, oh, like she's just like a little like girly girl who wears bows and makeups and like prances around on the floor and everything. So I think that a lot of people were shocked when I came out as gay. And even now, it's like a constant process of still having to come out, because I think that when people hear that a girl is gay or a woman is gay, they picture a more masculine woman, and they're not very feminine. So hearing somebody being gay and doing this artistic gymnastics or being more feminine, it comes as a shock to some people. And so it's still, like I was saying, it's a constant process of like continuously coming out and people being like, oh, do you have a boyfriend or your future husband one day? And me being like, oh, that's not it. I have a girlfriend. I'm going to have a wife one day. And I think just all of those stereotypes are just things that I still kind of face today, and things that I feel like a lot of gymnasts and a lot of feminine gay girls face. So
anybody else come up against stereotypes?
I think just growing up in Tennessee, I think just the stereotype was that if I was gay, it was going to make me become something other than myself, and when I came out as gay, there was I felt like there was going to be an expectation that I was suddenly more flamboyant than I like to be. Not to say that there's any problem at all with someone that is a little bit more flamboyant. I just feel like that stereotype was then placed on me. And whereas I didn't want to change, like me coming out as gay was just me still being Kale, and who I am. And then I think though, like with that being said, like, sure, there are more feminine sides of my personality. There are more flamboyancies that might come out at certain times. And again, I looked for programs where I felt like that would be accepted. I think it's actually funny. I'm thinking back on my trajectory and like what led me to choose Stanford. And I think from an outside looking in, I actually looked at OU as a program that there were these like super rah, like really loud guys that I just wasn't sure what my experience there would be. But then as I was in school, because of people like Raymond, and I ended up having close friends on that team, I got to know them more. And I was pleasantly surprised with the program that Mark's created, and that some of those, I think, more heteronormative, at least from an outside looking in, personalities that might have been on that team, it seemed to transform and change and be an accepting place. So I would just say that I feel like the stereotype was that I'm going to change, and that didn't necessarily have to be true, and I could just be myself, which was fortunate. So yeah,
I would say it's also I mean, for everyone, I know everyone here can relate to it. It's the challenge of judgment, because gymnastics, you are literally judged by what you look like or what your performance looks like. So add every negative connotation to anything around the LGBT inclusivity in society, and add that extra judgment to a sport that you've already submitted yourself to the most extreme judgment, and enters every hesitation to be yourself in your sport. So that kind of just a big picture it. That's a lot of the hesitation around, oh shoot, if I am, and also from the athlete perspective, it's athlete first, because you've spent 20 plus years of your life developing your craft. I say craft a lot. But it's like, okay, as a gay gymnast, am I now looked at as a eccentric like player on this team whose style is now, and I'll go back to Mark's example of Raymond, of like, oh yeah, like there's been so many comments, and I've seen it all, like, oh, this dude's doing women's choreography. And I actually commented back on one of them saying like, yeah, and he's scoring 15s all day long. So get over yourself. So as someone coming out or questioning, or, oh, can I be myself in this sport? They're wondering, am I now looked at as someone who's been dubbed the female men's gymnast? So it's a compounding of additional negative judgment and connotation that you're already living and breathing every single day.
And I think to add to your point, like I know I can bring up an example of a gymnast who was not recruited because of how, I mean, she's a lesbian and her haircut was too butch. And they were like, you can't look like that here. We do ponytails and face stickers. And so that's a real issue. I mean, it's a thing. So it's really incredible when you have teams that make people feel, included. So Mark, if you had a gymnast who was coming to you and they were, a young gymnast and they were wanting to come out, what kind of advice would you give them?
If they were going to be in the environment of my team, I would be like, let's have a conversation with the team. And I brought you here because I know you're a good gymnast and you want to get a university college education and be on a team that is competing for championships. Now that part of your experience here, that's your life, and I want to have everybody else understand and respect that person and who they want to become. But also, like, what's the big deal? Like, that doesn't change who I think of you as a gymnast or a student. I'm like, cool. All right, that's, I'm fine with it.
How about for the rest of you? Do you guys have advice for if there's a young gymnast, like Savannah talked about, she's had young girls tell her that they have, come out or been empowered to, be themselves because she has come out. What advice do you have for those gymnasts who might be watching this right now? Like Erin?
Yes. Yeah. So I have had similar experiences as Savannah, where when I came out, people would reach out, and it was more just people that have known me of, oh my gosh, it's awesome to see a feminine girl and you're so happy and in love. And that's hard in itself, because it doesn't matter what you look like, you should still be supported. And kind of goes back to what I said before of, everybody in the community should be supported, but people tend to pick and choose how people present themselves. They get supported, they don't, and it's just not fair. But as far as young gymnasts, I mean, it is getting so much better now that it just, like Mark said, like, it doesn't make a difference. It really doesn't. And there might still be those people that think that it does, or you may still get some negative stuff, and we all go through that, but it really doesn't make a difference. And like Savannah said, there's so many supportive people out there. And I think we can't express that enough. It's so scary, the scariest thing for a lot of us. And it's the cliche statement of like, it gets better with time. And at the time you're like, well, can time be now? Like, it took me this much time to accept myself, and now I have to wait for other people to accept me. So time is terrible just to wait for that to happen, but it genuinely does. And the more confident you are with yourself, and the more you are, you don't talk to somebody as wishy-washy and whatever, the more confident you are, the easier people are like, all right, this is great. So obviously there's never a rush to come out. People do it at their own time. There's always somebody out there in your circle, though, that you will be able to talk to, whether it's any of us on this panel or just people that you feel safe with. And it's always worth reaching out, because I always thought I had to build my army behind me. So I built an army with Alex Rankert, who's also on Tumbling and Trampoline, Austin Nacy, videos that are going crazy everywhere. So I built a little army of people I knew would support me, had no doubt, and kept building it. I came out to a couple people a day. And eventually I had this big army behind me, so that if I did come across somebody who was negative to me, I at least had these people behind me. That's just how I explained it and to myself. And that's what helped me kind of just feel supported. I started with the ones that were for sure's, and that can be any of us here, for anyone watching that needs to reach out and build their army. But it does help to have support behind you to go ahead and face the difficult things. But it is always worth it. You feel this huge, relief afterwards, and it just gets better.
I would add on to Erin's and just say, like, I think part of the reason that it's so terrifying is because you think that you know who's going to be supportive of you, but you don't know until you open your mouth and say the words and see the reaction. So like she said, like, you go through life feeling like you have to build up an army that you have in your back pocket of like, okay, when I'm ready, I can tell this person I'm gay and it's probably going to be fine. And so I just advocate for allies that are out there that are supportive of us. I think if you're a coach, if you're a teammate, if you're anyone, I think on a broader scale, if you're talking to a whole group of people, I think it's important, like I said at the beginning, to let them know that if you do feel like you need to come out, it will be a safe space, and they will be accepted prior to them doing it, one. And then I think two, for me, I on a one-on-one level with someone, if you think they're struggling, if you think they might be gay and they haven't come to it yet, I'm always an advocate of just asking them, like, are you gay? And whether they're ready to say yes to you or not, they are going to know when they are ready that they have a safe space in that person, and that they can go to them when they are ready, and they can be like, I know I said I wasn't, but I am. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I've been going through. Or maybe they are ready to come out to that one person. I know, like with my mom, even I was terrified to tell my mom, even though, back to the question earlier of a role model, I was lucky enough to have she's a cousin, more like an aunt figure, that was lesbian. So I was able to see my family interact and accept her. So I kind of had that groundwork with my parents, but it really took my mom being like, do you have a girlfriend? And I was like, no. She's like, well, you really don't seem like yourself, and you seem like you're hiding something. So do you have a boyfriend? And that was just like the floodgates open, and I could tell her, but it would like, I don't know that I could have like gotten the words out of the bottom of my throat if she didn't first put them out there for me to accept. And so I think that's a huge message just for allies. I saw a couple comments in the chat of just like, how can we be there? What can coaches do? What can teammates do? And I think just it's not your information to tell per se, but if you feel comfortable that you can offer support and you feel comfortable asking, I encourage you to do that to people. It helps.
We have about 3 minutes left. Does anybody else have any like closing thoughts? Closing message?
I was gonna add some advice. I definitely agree with everything that Kayla and Aaron said, but something else that I personally struggled with a good bit was trying to live up to the expectations that other people had for me, and trying to live the life that other people had set and like had planned for me. And I think that it's just important. I mean, it's cliche, but it's just important to be yourself. And, you know, not everyone's going to agree with the way that you live your life, or if you're doing something differently than they are. But that's just where you have to remember that diversity and is all about accepting each other's differences and recognizing that everybody has differences and accepting them and loving them for those differences no matter what. So I think it's important to know that you are going to be different from every person that you come in contact with, and that's okay. And like Aaron said, it's super important to have that army of people behind you, and that if you come up to somebody and they don't support you, you still know that you have people who have your back, and you have people who will be there for you and love you no matter what. And not everyone in life is going to accept every single part of you, and people are going to disagree with, you know, little things here and there. But as long as you have those people in your life who support you and love you for every decision that you make, or every part and every aspect of your personality that you might have, I just think that's super important.
Well said.
All right. I think that's it then.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories. I think if there was one thing that really stood out to me, Aaron, and something you said about how you came out to people every day, I think, you know, we're constantly coming out to people. People talk about it like it's a one-time event, but it's not. You come out every time you meet somebody new and they make an assumption about you. And so for me, being new to the gymnastics community just in the last year, you know, that was a coming out to this community. And so thank you to all the people on this panel for making that a more comfortable place to be out in, because you were out. It's not just younger gymnasts, it's also people new to the community. So thank you for that, and for your bravery today, and for sharing your stories, and for Mark and Jessica, your allyship, and for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. And I know this will mean a lot to the community. So thank you. And we'll get this up and put on the website.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so
Thanks,
much.
you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.